This is the Montessori Foundation's weekly webcast for Montessori school leaders. And today I invited Jono Landon, who's up in Toronto, Canada. He has a company called Hubbli. And the reason why we asked him to join us again, and someone asked me yesterday, sent me an email saying, isn't he talking about the same thing he did last time? And I said, no. Bottom line is, I have known Jono now for about 4 months. And every time I've talked to him, I've discovered that he has a great depth of knowledge about marketing and engagement. He also has an interesting piece of software, which we happen to have adopted at the Montessori Foundation. And you'll soon be seeing a new and improved Montessori.org. We're also beginning to use it at our lab school, the Newgate School. But today's topic is indirectly Hubbli. It's really all about how do you use your website to boost enrollment. Jono, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you very much. That's a great intro. I really appreciate the accolades, Tim. And yeah, I certainly am quite a nerd about marketing and how to use websites in general. These are, I would like to just position this, as Tim mentioned, that this isn't about Hubbli directly. This is about this information you're going to get today is going to be useful, across any web platform you use. Today, so we're going to talk about a topic that is really important to Montessori schools, especially. More and more, we're hearing that schools are having a hard time keeping their enrollment numbers up. Things are shifting. Most Montessori schools today want to increase their enrollment numbers, but not every school can afford a dedicated employee or a consultant to sell their school's good qualities to parents. But what if you were to learn that you could have a knowledgeable employee on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to inform parents about why they should enroll their child at your school or their children at your school. So, of course,
Jono, let me ask you a question. You're talking about the website essentially is a sales piece. What you mean, I assume, is it's essentially like a brochure. It's informational. It may have photographs. It may have videos. And if a parent stumbles on you, it's a 24-hour-a-day tool to help them to get immediate satisfaction of answers to their questions if you organize it correctly. How do they find it in the first place? Because when you mention the idea of marketing, usually that means print ads, TV ads, radio ads. I know you've spoken about this before, but I think it's worth just mentioning. How do we get people to come to that website?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question, and I promise we're going to cover that topic during this webinar because it's essential. I was saying that what if you could have a 24-hour employee? Of course, what I was referring to was your website, and it's funny, Tim. I actually like to. That's a great analogy, calling it a brochure. I actually like to call it a billboard. That's the analogy I try to use. I actually think it's more in line with what a website is, because if you think of a brochure, well, that's something sitting in in an office somewhere or on a display. But a billboard is on a street, and a website. If you could actually consider that Google or other search engines are really just like busy streets, and people are going down them at incredible rates. Like people are. I don't even know how many searches are happening a day, but it's actually not that hard to figure out how many people are searching for certain topics or keywords. But those searches, I think Tim, when we were doing a recent analysis, we saw the keyword Montessori being searched 500,000 times. I think that was in the last week, and so that just gives you a sense. Like, that's 500,000 different people looking for that one keyword, and then you can put that in combination with Montessori schools in New York. And I'm gonna get more. I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into this. How to approach your website like it's a billboard on a busy street. And so, when you set up a school, when a school sets up their website properly, it can actually do a good job of teaching parents more about your educational programs, while also increasing student enrollments. And of course, it's always up. It's always there 24 hours a day, holidays, late nights, and even when your school's closed. Parents can have the opportunity to be informed when it's convenient and on their time, and it's very similar to a billboard. They're there, people are driving by all the time. So another way to think about your school's website is to put it in to think about it like it's the place where not only can people see the information, but they can be directed towards a certain action. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. How to get them to take desired actions that are very specific, but lead them down the right path towards getting in touch with you, so that they can get into your enrollment or onboarding process. So everyone knows they need a website. I don't think I've come across a school that doesn't have something up online. But what I find is that most school directors don't quite understand what their website is meant to do for them. But I want to say, don't let this topic intimidate you, because what I'm going to try to do throughout this webinar is give you some really key, action steps. And as well, I want to mention now that after, I'm going to share with everybody a free, a free download that's kind of like a cheat sheet, something that's like a guide, basically, like a one-page guide towards making sure that your website, is checking off all the right boxes. So it'll be a simple template for you to use. So be sure to download that today after the webinar, and Tim and I will make it available to you. So I want to say, I would say, first and foremost, you really need to be updating the content that lives on your website. This is the actual copy that prospective parents will read to see if your school is a good fit. So to get this right, you're going to need to provide them and be writing parent-focused content for anything that's connected to your school. So a couple of important points about the copy is that you want to be trying to use a conversational tone, because that's something that makes it easier for parents just to read in general. Like there's some standards about how copy should be written on a web page that are different than a brochure or a book, of course. So they'll be interested in learning more about your school if they're being hit with the key value propositions in a more conversational tone right off the bat. So you want to think about writing with simple language. And I know that, and this is a hard thing for every industry to avoid, but you want to try to stay away from industry jargon, because and Tim, I'd love you to weigh in on this, but this is my opinion from the conversations I've had with many schools and many parents. The school's prospective families aren't necessarily Montessori experts, and I know that you guys, Tim, the Montessori Foundation are probably the deepest source for educating parents about Montessori principles, but they're not necessarily pre-educated before they come to meet your school. So I think it's important to keep that in perspective when you're writing the copy on your website. This will actually also tie into some of the strategies around getting parents to the website, but you want to make sure that you're staying away from jargon and sticking with language that they will most easily understand. But of course, keeping it professional. But you want them, you want to think about it like you've got them for a second as they hit your website. And you want to make sure that they absorb your key value propositions right off the bat without having to figure out, oh, well, what does that mean? If they have to pause and think, you're going to lose more prospective parents from taking the actions of getting into your onboarding. So
I will jump in here. I think that one of the things that you and I have both talked about is how easy it is to fail to capture the attention of your parents, because except for a small engaged group, most of us have parents who frankly see us as childcare. They're busy, they're spending a lot of money, they're somewhat resentful. They don't know if they're in a Montessori school or a monastery school, and they're frustrated. And getting them to pay attention is not easy. If you don't mind, Jono, before we go further, let me just run a quick poll with people. I just want to do a reality check. So this poll's going to show up. Please jump in. Let's see what your answers are. Do you have a website? So hopefully you're seeing that right now, and you're going to quickly fill it in. So it looks like 73% of you thus far have voted. 74, going to give you another 10 seconds. And I want to start paying attention. As you guys don't walk away, because you're going to be surprised. In coming sessions, we're going to start having things that will reward you for showing up and paying attention. I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to share the results. So basically, everybody is saying that they have a website, except for 2%, and there's 3% of you that are working on it. That's about what I expected. Let me just do one other quick poll. I'm going to close that down. Hide the results. This one will give us another sense. Whoops, hello. When I ask, how satisfied are you with your poll? So that's open and running too. It looks like 45%, 53% of you voted. Come on. Whether you're a Bernie Sanders fan or Ted Cruz or whatever country you're in, whoever you're voting for or not voting. The polls are about to close.
I don't think Canada gets a vote.
Yeah, well, you're in Ontario. Looks like about 74% have voted. Yeah, I'll give it 1, 2.
We dipped down into the States quite a lot, actually, and I think I mean geographically. So I think we should probably get some type of vote.
Well, I think Sarasota should be one of your voting precincts. Yeah. So I closed the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So it looks to me like 38% of you say that you love it, 44% say it's okay, and 18% are saying it needs to be redone. And boy, do I know that feeling. Okay, I'll close that and let you go back to work. I want to remind everybody that this is a process that we're really encouraging you to ask us questions and share comments. And even though I'll let Jono finish thoughts, I'll interrupt periodically to share with him questions that you ask, or if you want, we can open the mic up and you can speak to him live. By the way, I'm speaking to you today from outside on the quadrangle here at the lab school. We've had an internet problem for weeks in our office, and I finally decided I'm doing this thing under the trees. So if you hear any kids go by, that's what's going on. My little dog and I are sitting at one of the student work tables outside. Jono, back to you.
Okay, great. That's great, Tim. Thanks for putting that into context with the audience today. That's actually helpful. I might be able to bring some of those numbers into play here. So really, just getting back to the point I was making was, parents just don't have enough time these days to sift through long blocks of text, and that's not just parents. That's just really anybody that's online. So you want to limit your paragraphs to 3 sentences or less, and I really think that everybody here should make sure that you take some time, as an action tip, review each page on your website to see if you followed, these guidelines. Like before you get started, you want to determine, the main question or problem your page is solving or answering, and review your copy to see if it addresses that concern in a very direct and conversational way. If it doesn't, you're going to want to update it as soon as possible. Okay, and you really want to do that on really every page of your site. This is what makes a website work for you, and it's great because usually these homepage and landing pages, as we're going to get into, you just have to get it right, and there's some easy ways of testing it, but this is the type of thing that once you got it right, it keeps working for you. So you put a little bit of effort and time into it, and it's really like a robot that just keeps on helping you grow your enrollment. So the last point is becoming more and more important every day, every year, especially if you consider that more internet searching and browsing. The point about making sure that your site is mobile responsive for both. Mobile responsive also means just mobile friendly. So designed not only for desktop computers or laptops, but also for mobile phones and tablets. And this is something that, mobile friendly, everybody kind of knows that term, but it's becoming more and more important every year, especially if you consider that more internet searches and browsing in general is done on mobile phone more than any other device today. and also, of course, you want your website to be found at the top of searches when people like your prospective families are doing searches for a school like yours. And this is so important to the point where it actually rewards websites that are built in a mobile responsive way. So it grades your site on a number of elements. It runs through your website before it decides which ones it's going to present and in what order. And when somebody is on a mobile device, which is more often than not, if your website is not designed for mobiles, for the mobile display, it won't be seen, or it'll be pushed down the results. So it'll be seen in a much less, a much smaller ratio. So you always want to, and this is, by the way, and I will touch back on Hubbli now. Hubbli sites are, no, Hubbli is a, I'll talk about Hubbli at some point a little bit more in depth, but Hubbli is not, we're not a company that just does websites for schools. It is one of the features or offerings that we have. Some of our customers use their Hubbli site as their main site, and everything, all the sites that Hubbli offers are all they're actually designed to mobile first to make sure that they're really easy to use on mobile devices. So so on top of adopting that conversational tone and to the point copy, your content should really be useful. And another thing to consider is the size of those paragraphs. That's also part of being designed for mobile phones, because when you've got that thin display, having more than 2 or 3 sentences can make paragraphs seem really, really long, and that just gets people to stop reading, basically. So another really important aspect to being found by prospective families is to write often and consistently. So the best way to keep parents informed, is to update your school's website as often as possible. And when I say often as possible, that also means on a consistent schedule. So once parents see that your school's website is the best way to learn about your school, they'll be more likely to come there to do that. And this also this means you'll need to change the content of your site fairly often. Now, we're not talking about updating each and every page. I don't want to make this sound like a much larger job than it is. Rather, we're referring to posting updated information like, general announcements, event details, and maybe even some, informative blog posts each week. And I'll dive into the blog post a little bit more. So speaking of your blog, like this is a great place to answer some common questions that prospective parents may have. And if you notice that a few parents have asked the same questions about the school, like bus routes or extracurricular activities in the past, you should kind of you should think about using that as your content strategy. You can create a post that dives deeper into these questions. So as an action tip to take away, to make this work without adding obviously to your already growing to-do list. I know running a school, and I know that our customers and all the schools we talk to, people that run these schools the whole point of Hubbli is to help you reduce your work managing, tasks, and that's what Hubbli is about. So I really do appreciate how busy you guys are, and so an idea is to choose a different teacher each week to be in charge of writing a blog post, about what your school's up to. Prospective students and parents will also want to see what they can expect from your school. So really, it's a great way to have an insider's look from your teachers, right? And after all, your teachers have firsthand experience when it comes to parental concerns and questions. So they'll be a great resource for finding the best ideas to share. Plus, each teacher could highlight their hard work and help spread different yet important messages. Like you've got all these people, and they all have they're part of your team because they're probably smart and capable and great teachers, and they without asking too much of them, like asking them to maybe write a blog post every couple months as you cycle through everybody, you can really get some incredibly deep and valuable resources. And you also want to think about your blog content as like a value-added kind of feature to the school. So like something that's focused on just kind of giving to your parents, something that they can use literally the same day that they read it. And if you create a couple of requirements around the content, it would be really easy to get some a consistent schedule of really valuable and useful, and that's the key thing, utility-driven, useful content that both prospective parents will really appreciate, but also your existing parents will love it all that much more and be more inclined to listen to you and understand that you guys are experts in what you do. So the strategy here is to post content that not just for your prospective parents, or not just for your existing or prospective parents, both of them. So whether they come to your school or not, this is how you gain that expert trust in the field of teaching and raising children, so that when a parent has to decide where to place their child, with your school or the one that's down the street, they will be more likely to go with the school that is so knowledgeable that they've already subscribed to your blog and use your lessons that you're giving to them at home with their kids. Like, if you could imagine, like I'm gonna, maybe this is another good poll question. I'll let Tim decide that. But if you were to imagine all the prospective families that you've ever spoken to that have or haven't, become, part of your enrollment. if they were already subscribed to a blog, your blog, where they were getting regular content from you, that they really appreciated and that actually solved, immediate problems in their lives, how much more likely, or how many more of them would have, stuck with you, or can become your clients? So if you think about it, you could be teaching their children before they're even enrolled by giving their parents these lessons and these tools and these tips to use at home. So as a couple of ideas of topics, there could be, how to get your kids to eat healthy as one. Tim, I know you've got a million of these. You've got books of these. Top 3 strategies for handling sibling fights.
Yeah,
So
one of the issues you've got here. Let me pull you back to a question that's been asked that I think sort of frames all this. And then we can get to the issue of topics and where do you get this stuff. We have a question that's been asked by Renu Mohan. She says, do you think that weekly newsletters and photos should be posted on the website instead of sending it out in an email?
Well, they should be both. So you don't want to pick one or the other. You want your news, and that's a great question, and it's one that isn't apparently obvious, or the answer isn't obvious. But you want your newsletter to, I'd say best practice is to have the newsletter go out, the same day that you sort of release the blog, the new post, and you want to intro the blog post. And maybe give like a bit of a little snippet of it, and then lead them to the website, because and the reason for that is that the website is the place where you want that prospective parent or that existing parent to take an action, whether it be so it could be like you've got this prospective parent that's maybe like me, like I've got a 18-month-old daughter, and soon we're going to start figuring out where we're going to put her into which programs or what schools. And so if I've subscribed to a school in my area and I'm getting awesome information from them, stuff that I'm using with her at home, and I'm reading that blog post on a regular basis, if I was to get that blog post, if I was to get that newsletter that led me to the blog post, and beside that blog post, if I was to see a big button that said, enroll or inquire here or learn more, or sign up or book a tour, like as I, it's not going to happen every time I click on that newsletter, but one of those times, if this is a school that I'm like in love with because they're helping me already, that's going to trigger me to to click on that button. But you're not going to get that type of activity from the newsletter.
So wouldn't a best practice be to create your blog post or your newsletter on your website as a publicly viewable web page, and then grab the headline and some of the text and maybe a picture that you have permission to use, and fire it off in an email. And that way, parents will end up going to your web page, and there's usually, with any of these blogs, there's an index of all of the blogs that have been posted, categorized either by topic or by the month or whatever. Isn't that the way you would do it?
Yeah, you've pretty much nailed it. I might say you may or may not want to include images in your blog post. That's a very, very minute detail. There's a lot of debate as to whether, not images in your blog post. You should definitely have images in your blog post. You may not want to have images in the newsletter because there's debate, whether, images in the actual email is good or bad, and that's always going to differ from market to market. But in any event, yeah, that workflow is really the best way to approach it. this might this might sound kind of funny, but if you want to see it in action, go to Hubbli and sign up for our newsletter, because you will actually experience it yourself, and I promise we'll only send you useful content that you can use as school leaders, but you would get a regular weekly newsletter from us that introduces the topic and talks about why this topic is important and why we wrote about it, with a link to go read that blog post on our website. It'll take you directly to that post, and on that post you're going to see some really clear call to actions, that are obviously geared towards our goals as a business, not getting people to enroll into our school, but getting school leaders to learn more about our software. But
I want to attest to this. The reason why I actually called you back, or I didn't call you back, I think I reached out to you, was one of those blogs that you sent out. It was the one about writing newsletters, and I've written lots and lots of articles about how to write newsletters, and I thought yours actually had a lot of new ideas, and it was formatted in a very easy to digest way that did not overwhelm me. And that's one of the things that most parents tell us, is they don't have time, and they don't want to be overwhelmed. And by the way, I don't practice what I preach. One of the reasons why I asked you on here is because I myself am learning from you. I think Jono Landon and his team's main advantage, or what they really have to give, is not simply the software. I mean, the software, I've seen software of all sorts that can be used by schools, and as you all know, we work with a number of different software platforms, most particularly Montessori Compass. But what really caught my eye was Jono's writing about how to capture people's attention and hold it. And I think what he's getting at really is worth saying. He's held my attention for the last 3 or 4 months, and I was resistant, to tell you the truth. Donna Laterese has asked a couple of questions. She says, Jono, why would pictures not be good to include in an email?
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking about that. Essentially, there's a couple things. Number one, depending on, email is a very, 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 very fickle and hard to control media of communication. Although, I mean, it is the most important form of communication, and it really is the backbone, especially for really for any business today, as far as maintaining a relationship with their customer base or the clientele. And everybody uses it. Try to find somebody without an email address today, it's pretty difficult, But there's so many different tools, and email is like, it's this really, really massive architecture built on a very frail foundation, because it can't really be updated. So it's actually it's a very interesting situation, and there's many different email management tools out there trying to solve the problems, but they're building, all of them are built on top of a very inconsistent and frail architecture, and I want to stay away from getting too technical here, but basically, just to put it into context, like you might be using Hotmail, you might be using Gmail, you might be using Yahoo, you name it. Like there's all these different email service providers and email clients where people actually access their provided emails. So they all act differently, and if you send a picture, and they all handle images differently. And so images is one of those things that's really hard, like the display of an email. Although you might think you're writing your email in in Gmail, and you're making it bold, and you're putting a bulleted list, and you put a nice picture in there, or you might use something like MailChimp or anything like that. And the reality is that it's very, very likely that from parent to parent, whoever is reading that, they're gonna have a different experience, and they're gonna see something different. So it's not advised to over format your emails, and the idea, the ideal, and the highest engagement, and this doesn't necessarily apply to every market. You can never say something applies to all markets. It definitely never does. But the majority of tracked email engagements, you'll find that everyone that does this research generally says, a simple plain text email is the best way to go. It's the best way to ensure that the message is getting across and people understand what And I will admit, we do send some of our newsletters, some of our emails with images, like especially around holiday season and things like that, where we really want to do something funny or really try to get a specific sort of message or emotion across in our email. Sometimes you just can't do it without a picture, or it's just it's aided, But generally speaking, I would say 95% of our emails that go out are just plain text. So that was a very long-winded answer. I hope it was
it
clear.
is, but it's really good. When you were on our program a few weeks ago, you said something about training parents to ignore email from us. Can you circle back around to that? Because speaking personally, I'm happy if when I send out 22,000 emails to all of my friends in the Montessori community, I'm happy if 3,000 people actually open it up.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a
How do you
great point.
get?
So,
I'm overwhelmed by email every day, and I'm sure every one of you listening is as well. And I know darn well your parents are. They're probably telling you that you're sending too much stuff home. They can't digest it all. How do you get
yeah,
people to pay attention?
yeah. So that's one of the key issues, and one of the biggest, I would say, one of the core reasons why we developed Hubbli was parents. Our sort of highest level goal is to help facilitate better, more, but not just more, but better parent, engagement. And in interviewing, hundreds of parents, everybody says the same thing. Like they just are they hate how they get, and this is across the entire industry, not just Montessori. It's like this is a systemic problem that they just like the amount of information that gets thrown at them and the amount of times it gets thrown at them is unmanageable. And generally speaking, when parents get things like newsletters, they're usually way too long. And I mean, this is just some standard like email newsletter best practice, stuff. But they're way too long, way too many details, and that's multiplied because 99, or maybe that's aggressive, but the majority of the information is not relevant to them. It's actually about all the other students in the school and not their children. And so what happens is when they're just getting the fire hose thrown at them over and over again, you're training the parents to ignore you because they just begin to dodge it. It just sits there in their inbox, or they archive it in Gmail or whatever. So Hubbli has a different way of approaching parent communications, which does include newsletters. We also have that as one of our features, but the other features we have allow your newsletters, allow you to send information to parents that is more bite-sized and always 100% relevant, so that you can actually retrain them to pay attention to you. So it's not painful and not annoying really to sift through all this extra information, but really they get a small little update with 1 or 2 sentences, and it's about their kid or about their child's class.
So you're talking about a text message, right?
Well, that's one. So what we do is we centralize all the different forms of communication that parents expect and that schools are trying to harness. Generally, schools are not doing a great job of cobbling together all these different tools. So we make it really easy by pulling out the the core features of things like text messages and social groups like Facebook groups, things like that, and newsletters like MailChimp and Constant Contact, and putting them all into the right context so that making filtering information out to the right parents is automatic and easy, and without having to figure out how to use all these different systems. And so yeah, so on because schools are sending out newsletters, this is so important, and that's really the key part. We believe, our stance is that if you send parents only relevant information to them, they will be more engaged and be more informed, and it'll be easier for everybody to hit their goals. But if you continue to just throw everything at them, you're going to continue to, they're just going to tune it out, unfortunately, and be uninformed.
There's a couple of other points with that. One is many parents say, I missed that email, or it went into my spam folder, or I deleted it by accident. One of the things that, there's different issues with each thing I've just raised, but one of the things about programs like Hubbli and Montessori Compass is at least their email is archived in the website. The trick is they have to log in to do it. And so the advantage of the email is you're knocking on someone's door and trying to get their attention. And the secret is, how do you best do it? But if they do screw up, they can go back in and see it and say, oh, I remember a newsletter was sent out. So you've raised several issues. You said, try not to have a one-size-fits-all newsletter unless you really think that you're giving just enough information that the parent who does not have a kid in that class is going to be interested. I would like to do a separate webcast with you, Jono, where we talk about our different perspectives and experiences about, what makes a newsletter interesting and how do you best do it. I'm still learning, but as somebody that produces a magazine and various newsletters and so forth, we really struggle with this and have for almost 45 years now. Sure. Margaret Whitley, one of your fellow Ontarians down in London, asked this question, Jono. Where on the Hubbli website can I sign up for your newsletter?
So what you want to do is you're going to go to any of our blogs, and there'll be an opportunity. So if you go to hubbli.com/blog, and then you click on, you go to any of the blog articles, inside of the article, there's an opportunity to download a piece of content, and if you do that, you'll be entered into our newsletter system.
So in your system, to sign up for the newsletter, they need to essentially go to a landing page, fill out some information, and download a PDF. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so exactly. Well, they won't have to go to a landing page. We have a bit more of an advanced system where it's a pop-up, but ours, essentially it's the same type of flow, but because we are not a school, like the way we handle it is a little bit different, because our goals, our business goals with our content and those pages is a little bit different. So it's not like the call to action isn't sign up for our newsletter, which is what I suggest for a school, but our call to action is, download this helpful piece of content, this helpful, checklist or this blueprint or this guide, and then you'll be signing up for it and entering into our newsletter feed. So then you'll start getting, more helpful content. But just because of our business and the way we do sales and everything, it's not quite as simple. We're testing different things all the time, but
sure.
Yeah.
So Karen asks a question: do attachments to an email make it less likely that it's going to be read or delivered? Will it be seen as spam?
Yeah, it is more likely to be seen as spam. Yeah, definitely. It's that's also from the internet service provider's side, and in addition, especially if it's a PDF attachment, and in addition to that, the person getting it might be more hesitant to download a bigger message because it's gonna be a bigger file size and it's gonna be longer to download, and that can also get some, create some more drop off.
Yeah. Mary O. Young asks this question. She says, so maybe newsletters ought to be printed, hard copy. I find that pictures of students who are working or participating in a classroom activity is very engaging for parents, and also we have to adhere to photo waivers, etc. Well,
Yeah,
Mary, I'll say one thing. Photo waivers are the same whether you do it online or not. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you share a photo of a child, even if it's within the school community behind a password, you're still under some rules about what you can do or not do. And you may want to write to us for language if you want about photo releases and what we recommend. But Jono, you may want to chat about the print versus the online newsletter.
sure. I think there's a place for printing a newsletter. I think that it's not going to be you wouldn't want to make it your main strategy. It's just, what you don't want to do is offer content the way that the world is not going, right? So like your parents are, like I'm 37 years old, right? So I'm probably around this age of most of the parents, in sort of in that ballpark. And like, uh, I can assure you that personally, me and my friends are not interested in picking up another piece of paper and adding it to the pile as they come home. And that's one of the biggest complaints we hear from parents is the amount of not just emails, but like paper, like forms and stuff like that. And again, that's something that Hubbli does. We have digital forms to get the paper out of the picture in regards to like managing information and getting so the school can collect information and documentation and stuff like it can reduce the workload and the dollars by 90%. That aside, so you don't want to now if you actually do it, and I would say for a school that's using a tool like Hubbli and has gone sort of paperless in the office, and so parents are not dealing with piles of paper and they're getting and they in addition to getting their newsletter, which drives them to the blog post or the article, which has images. I think that a newsletter can be nice, but like having it, if they're, I would say, maybe you should survey your parents, because like we do surveys, we talk to parents. It's not of interest. We're not seeing that, but every community is a little bit different, right? So I think what you should do, and I think this is really important for all schools, is learn what your parents want, and what's even better than asking them, because generally speaking, and I don't want to sound rude, but like usually in regards to these forms of communication, people don't know what they want. Well, what you want to do is watch their behavior, right? Like, the famous quote from Henry Ford is, if I asked people what they wanted, they would ask for a faster horse, but what they really wanted was a car, and he had the vision to see that, right? So, like, don't just take what people say necessarily on face value. Watch what they do, and you're busy people, and like, for you to like create a test environment, create a hypothesis and a sample and an A/B version and test, test this stuff on your parents is time consuming, and it's like you're not necessarily in that mode. That's what Hubbli's for. That's what we do. We're testing and we're learning for you, and that's what our system is about. And I just think that in regards to paper, our customers are coming to Hubbli because their parents want them to go paperless. Their parents are tired of not just the annoyance of getting a parent packet with 30 sheets of paper in it, and that they have to fumble around with that, and newsletters and this stack of paper that's growing and growing. They get sick of throwing it out or having to put it in the recycle bin, and what it means for like the dollars that and the trees. It's paper has its place. Children, I think paper is best used in a school for crafts, right? That's where it gives value. It's educational value. It's tactile, and it's But in regards to communicating information from a school to a parent, paper doesn't add any value. That's our belief, and that's why newspapers are going digital or dying, and that's why most magazines are going digital, because people, and by the way, parents today, that demographic are the most active and engaged demographic digitally today. So
let me go a step further. Your parents almost certainly work for a corporation. They know that if you ever duplicate something that is copyrighted, you get fired. Especially if you have teachers for parents, they're particularly aware of it. So there's several issues in addition to everything you've said. A lot of people create newsletters that frankly are not very impressive looking. And if you do produce an impressive looking piece and it's printed beautifully in color and it's not on the kind of paper that will normally go through the kind of machine most of us have, you're putting in a lot of time and a lot of money.
And by the way, that can't be used. Well, it's also not so easy to use that same image and design for an email and do it well.
Yeah. The other issue is getting high quality stuff written is almost impossible. Maybe you have a better group of teachers working for you than I've known typically, but I find people who can write who have no time to write. And the bottom line is having a steady flow of information other than, let me tell you about our field trip to the pumpkin patch. The kind of information that most schools try to share is ripped off from the internet. And they get into all kinds of trouble with parents when they do that kind of stuff. By the way, that's the reason why the Montessori Foundation created Tomorrow's Child. One, the argument that we make is if you're going to have paper, it should be impressive like a magazine. And it used to be the Barry School magazine. And you may have a school that's big enough that you have a proper published periodical. But even we are going digital step by step, as some of you probably know. And what we're hearing, and this is the shocker for me, 80% of all people that read digital content are reading it on smartphones, not on their desktop computer. So they're doing it while they're standing in the grocery store line, or they're doing it while they're in bed and they've got their cell phone up in front of them and they're just scanning their email and they read through the newsletter on a smartphone.
Absolutely. And so, when you're, and that's why, you want to rely on a system, either like, so Hubbli has like a really easy sort of drag and drop newsletter designer. We give you a bunch of templates to start from. It's the same thing that MailChimp does or Constant Contact. There's many different newsletter features. The difference with Hubbli is that it's in a suite of other school communication tools, so you don't have to manage multiple tools. But you wanna use a tool like that because it takes care of the device strategy, meaning you don't have to design like if you were to design something for print, like it's a totally different approach to design. You have to use much higher resolution images. It's much more expensive, obviously, because you're printing it. To make anything look good, in high quality, it's a much harder job as opposed to, being able to like click on a template and bam, you've got a nice design, and all you have to do is type in the words, essentially. If that's all you have time for, that's all you have to do, and then the system, like Hubbli or others will make sure that it responds to the size of the display appropriately. Um, and it's so important to consider that, and it's so that's why it's so much more practical to design in a tool like that rather than physically print out a newsletter, because if I mean, what we see a lot too is some pretty bad design. Let's be honest. Like, again, people that are running schools are experts in education and parenting and and communication, but they're not design experts. You're not like it's a whole area it's an area of study. Like it's not simple. So whipping out Microsoft Word and throwing in some images, or what the type of things that we see, it's pretty. Again, parents are savvy. Like they're getting great content all over the place, and when they get something that looks kind of thrown together and not designed by a professional, it doesn't boost their confidence in your school.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest, that might be one of the biggest concerns. Like you want to make sure that you're matching their expectations, and doing it yourself is not, I mean, it's a much harder job, like unless you're an expert, unless you know how to use these tools.
I will make a shameless pitch for what we've been doing at the foundation, and this is only a small part of what we do, but it's the longest standing project for the last 24 years. We've gathered more than 60 of the top psychologists and Montessori educators who write for parents in the country, and we produced a parent-only journal. Now, there are lots of great journals designed for Montessori educators, but they're not user-friendly for parents. There are lots of one-off books, starting with my friend Aileen Wolf's, Parent's Guide to the Montessori Classroom. But those are one-off books. You need a steady drip of information of all sorts. And that's what Tomorrow's Child does. What you want to be doing from your school is indeed talking about what's going on within your school. Don't try to be an expert on Montessori education and the big picture unless you are. Because unless you're a fantastic writer and your parents really care, frankly, from their point of view, you're a salesman. And you're trying to sell them on paying tuition to them, again, assuming you're in a tuition-based school. And the bottom line is they tend to tune you out unless you're talking about what's happening in the classroom this week, maybe what's happening on campus. Certainly if the elementary kids did some kind of charity event, or if they're putting on a play and you want people to know about it, or you want to have a short video about it, yeah, that's what parents want to read. You don't want to try to explain how the pink tower works or why the metal insets is not just an art project. We've got a couple of very specific questions. Donna asks, what should we include, Jono, in an About Us page?
Well, I would say that's a great question, and what you want to do is you want to focus on really the top three points of value that are really that distinguish you from the other options that the parents have, right? Like, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to continue on in my presentation that I set up, because this specific topic is going to be addressed. What I'll do is I'll just so I'm going to get right into that question in 1 second. So
I will tell you that Nina, by the way, is saying, can we get back to the website subject? There's a lot of information about newsletters coming out here.
Yeah. So newsletters is so this is a good question about websites. What should you have in your About Us? And I think we're gonna cover that in a moment. But if we don't, I'm happy to obviously answer it in a question, or perhaps we can have a follow-up conversation. So one thing you want to do is you want to make it super easy for parents to get in touch with you. Okay. So with useful content, parents will undoubtedly, want to take the next step towards learning more about your school, or even, hopefully starting the enrollment process. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them. So I've got, the super simple Google search page here to make a point. When you go to google.com, you know what you're supposed to do, right? Ideally, your prospective parents will have that much clarity when they find your website, or when they come back every time to your website, and you want them to get in touch with you. So you want to give them that type of clarity. You go to google.com, obviously for me it's google.ca, right? Google. I'm in Toronto. It's unmistakable. Type in this field, right? So by using call to action headlines and buttons that have phrases like, learn more, or enroll now, or contact us, parents will understand right away that, that these links offer, further assistance or a means of reaching someone at the school. And these are concepts that go across the board, but especially when, they're especially important when you've got, when you want a prospective, parent to reach out. So you want to make sure these links stand out from the rest of the items on the page as well. So as you can see, you can select larger or bolder font sizes, as well as changing the color. That may be something that's more bright or more attention grabbing. So here's an example of what that might look like at the Keystone School here. So this is also, it's a good idea to display your phone number or email address, prominently on the page, and this makes it much easier also for parents to contact you right away. So whether they enroll through, they click on a link in your site, or call you, that's the result that you want, and it more or less that's the same from school to school. It's also a good idea to display your phone number, and these are just some real specifics here that I think are really important for schools. These are just best practices as well. Put your phone number or email address on every page. So this makes, so even if they're navigating across the site, if you've got it in the header or the footer, it's there. And an important best practice about for web pages is to not have too many calls to action, because you don't want them to compete with each other on the same page. So be sure to choose, it's ideal to have one action for parents to take per page. That's the most, that's the best way to get the desired action taken, is to not have it competing with any other actions. And that's something that people have a very, very hard time accomplishing, because it's not, people think, oh, it's on a web page and I can click on this or go over here or learn about this here, and it's really not ideal. So you want to double check that the phone number and the email address are always there. And as an action tip, so again, check out every page of your site to see if you've made it easy for parents to take an action. Make sure that only one is listed per page again. So in the same way that call to action headlines and buttons guide parents to take the next step, that's what your content should do as well. So this is a more subtle approach than changing the color of a button, yet it's just as effective. So sometimes parents need a gentle nudge guiding them towards what to do next. So like call today, so the phone number is there, but you might want to say also with some text, call today or call now. So essentially, as you write or rewrite the copy on your website or your blog post, consider what actions you'd like parents to take. This could be as simple as encouraging them to sign up for your newsletter, to stay in touch, directing them towards your enrollment form, or just learning more about the enrollment process. So if you want actionable content to encourage newsletter subscribers, you can end each post with something like, to learn more or to get more of this useful content, sign up here, and get, something that's really obvious, simple, and action oriented. So you want to decide what steps you'd like parents to take, and and be sure to weave this goal throughout your copy and at the end of the page or post. So you want to keep in mind that as much as possible, again, I just want to kind of circle back around to trying to sound natural and authentic, and use the exact language that you would use in person. Again, trying to stay away from things that are sort of industry jargon or whatnot. Trying to keep things as basic and universal as possible. So that brings me to the next topic here. So now I talked about some kind of very specifics here, like some tactical level stuff. I also want to talk a little bit more strategically. So you want to use landing pages when running a campaign, and a campaign is this is the the way to strategically get a specific group of parents or a source of traffic to a goal, and this would generally start off of your website and then incorporate your website or other digital tools to go from traffic to getting them opting in, and that would be an inquiry form, to ultimately converting and being a new family. So in the digital world, a landing page is simply a page that any website visitor can literally land on, or quote, well, not literally, but quote unquote land on, via a web search or an ad campaign, or it could also be from a newsletter. So you want to think about a typical banner ad. Like you've probably clicked on one or two banner ads in your lifetime. So the user, or the parent in our case, let's say they're on Facebook and they see an ad that they find interesting and click on it. So you might want to put an ad in. Like, Facebook ads are great. You can target people of a particular interest, could be of an age level and of an education level, in a city or a region, and you can present an ad to them. What makes a landing page different from a traditional website page is that these, so when they click on it, they go to the landing page, but that landing page is a standalone web page that's distinct from your main website. That has been designed specifically for a focused objective. Like, this is taking the concept of having a goal for each page and going even further with it. So this means that there's no top generally speaking, there's no top navigation, and usually one very clear, simple call to action that guides the users to make a very specific move, such as signing up to learn more or filling out an inquiry form. So this can just be a page on your site as well. It doesn't mean separate, like it's a different website. It's a page on your site that is kind of stripped down and designed very specifically. So it's scaled back and again, removes all those navigation menus, all those things that compete, that can take people out of this funnel of steps. So in its simplest form, you can think of a landing page as a digital flyer that that basically lives on your website. It contains all the important details about your school. So this is like the elevator pitch for your school, basically, But it's written in a condensed and impactful way. So it could be, generally speaking, this is the type of stuff that would be on your About Us, the type of content that's very, very high level. But again, you want to make sure that you're communicating the top 3 things that make you stand out, from the other options that parents might have. And then towards the end of the page, generally parents will have an option to immediately sign up for maybe the enrollment process, or maybe just put their email address in to learn more, or maybe I'll show you. I'm going to show you a workflow in a second. Give you a couple ideas. it's ideal if you can create some kind of urgency as well. Or some type of scarcity, to motivate the parent to take the next step. And that's a really important key element here, because when you're using a landing page, it doesn't have the navigation. They cannot click on to go anywhere else, right? That's like one of the rules. You might want to have something in there that gets them or motivates them to take that action. That page is the goal of that page. So something like enrollment is filling up quickly, so secure a tour now, right? Like you want them to feel not like, oh my God, the world's ending, or you don't want to be you don't want to be too aggressive, or else you might turn people away. But you might want to say something that's pretty fair, and like we only have this many spots. Like you might sign up for a tour now, so that so you don't get stuck on a waiting list, which is just a reality in schools, right? So when done correctly, each visitor or parent chooses to take action right then and there, So, once that happens, your website will keep a tally of every parent that's provided their information and compile, your own database of qualified leads, basically. So the parents that come in and take that action, they can also be added to your newsletter or whatnot. And I really can't stress this point enough. Like, don't go buying ads, please, or pay someone to do search engine optimization and have them just point to your site's homepage, because it's very less likely that you're going to end up getting nearly as much revenue per dollar that you spend on those ads or that consultant, that SEO consultant. So though you might get some value out of it, it's going to be much less efficient. And really it's very hard to track the efficacy of the ad or that web page. And that's also one of the reasons why landing pages are so important, is because you're not going to you might create a campaign, or you might even hire a consultant or something to come in and help you do this. But if they're not hitting if there is not like one option to track or one way to go, or the ability to have version A or version B and test between the two, which is called split testing, you can't really test and optimize this campaign or this strategy. So what happens most times is people oh, I heard Facebook ads are good, they'll start buying Facebook ads or Google AdWords or something, and they're not really connecting it to a fully baked campaign, and what happens is they end up thinking they just threw money down the toilet, and they may have and they may not have, but they can't really know because they didn't track. And they can't test what works better, what call to action is more important. Like, can you get people to sign up for for a newsletter, or can you get them to book a tour? Like, what works and what doesn't work? And you need to have a very, very controlled categorical flow to be able to do that. So don't just send them to your homepage. All right. So this is an example of a pretty simple campaign. The traffic, let's say, is the ad. The traffic can be, it can be an ad that's clicked. It could be a Google search. It could also come from newsletter, and it takes them to a landing page that collects their information and then sends them to a thank you page. That's like a pretty basic standard, campaign. And I would say two ideal additions is to have when they do fill out that lead capture form on that landing page. So that could be, I call it a lead capture form. That's just a general term. It could be your inquiry form, or sign up to learn more. They can be added to an automated. They can be added to the email newsletter drip. So you might have, like, there are systems out there. Hubbli is one of them that make it easy to, automate a sequence of communications that goes out after they do that, so that you are you know, continually touching base with them and maybe offering them some ideas or, you know, hitting them with some useful content. But the idea is to keep on engaging that person so that they're more likely to get in touch with you or take, you know, the next action goal. Another idea is to, you know, on that thank you page, it could be something as simple as thanks for, you know, signing up to learn more, but you also might want to give them the ability to book it, like they signed up to learn more, but then, you know, and again, you don't want to have these things on the same page. You want them to sign up to learn more. You want to capture that lead, that prospective family. But after that, you might want to go and say, thanks for, you know, showing interest. And by the way, if you want to just go ahead and book a tour, you know, here's our schedule, and where they can literally book a tour right there. Again, this is another thing. There's all these different bits and pieces of these campaigns and everything. These are all, you know, there's individual products out there that you can tie together to make all this work, and, you know, a lot of consultants can do that for you. The whole point about Hubbli is that we actually have all these things in one system. So like from the, you know, once they get onto the website and creating a landing page, and then, you know, putting them into an email sequence, and then, you know, capturing that lead. Hubbli has all these different bits and pieces in one system, so that it's all centralized and easy, and we help you set it up as well. But you don't need Hubbli to do that. But, you know, our goal is to make it really easy for you to do that. So so now let's talk a little bit about, you know, what. Well, if you want, we can. I've just gone over a lot of different things. Are there any questions on any of these topics? All right, Tim. So just let me know if anybody, you know, pops up with any questions.
I'm sorry, Jono, I had myself muted. I've been answering a lot of questions just by firing off responses within the system. Emma has just said something. Let me just take a look. She's just saying that her website, Emma's School in the .co.uk, has a lot of the features. And she's saying if people want to look at it, she would welcome feedback. So I'll send that out to everybody. And encourage any of you who want to look at Emma's website, do so, and I'm sure she would be happy to hear back from you. And if Emma, if you'll send me your email, I'll be happy to fire that off for everyone else. No other questions at the moment. You're doing great.
Okay, great. And, you know, I also want to mention that something that we're offering to all the audience today is that that Hubbli is offering, that we'll do a free website assessment. If we'll give you, we'll follow up with you with a link so that you can actually schedule that. But it'll be a free assessment where we'll sit down with you and, you know, analyze your site and give you some pointers, or, you know, our suggestions for how you could improve your site, or, you know, how you can, you know, tie in these different tools to create these campaigns. So yeah, so, you know, so creating, you know, this landing page, you know, where that captures these leads, it takes some, you know, there's a few steps that you want to go through to, you know, to make sure that you're at least, you know, shooting at the right target. So before you dive into creating a landing page, you're going to need to brainstorm a few important keywords that relate to your school. So, you know, if you're a Montessori school in New York, let's say, you'd want to include those specific keywords in your landing page. This is important for, you know, search engine traffic, or, you know, tying it to also to an ad campaign. So like the type of school, obviously, like Montessori or private or charter. You know, the grade level is important as well. Like, you want to make sure that kind of the high level concept of this is that you want, if you're going to invest, because like this is going to take dollars. This is, you know, whether it's, you know, trying to optimize it for search engines so people come there, or paying for the ads, There's dollars that are going to go into this. It's time and it's money. So you want to filter out. You want to give people the opportunity to filter themselves out as much as possible, so that you're ultimately only getting, the leads or the inquiries that are kind of worth your time, really, because your time is really limited. It's very valuable. So, so make sure that you're communicating. And this might seem abundantly obvious, but this stuff gets missed a lot. The grade levels, the location of your school. So these things also get picked up by searches as well. And you want to use keywords that parents are likely to use when they search for your schools nearby. So if you can imagine for a second that you're a parent looking to enroll your child in a school in the neighborhood, you might type in something like Montessori's schools near 10804, or Montessori schools near 90210, for example. So it's crucial that these keywords are somewhere in your landing page as well, so they'll come up when parents are performing a web search. And to be clear, you don't want to stuff your page with these keywords. So I always get a little bit apprehensive when I talk about keywords and give people suggestions, because sometimes they just kind of like throw these keywords all over the place, and then they end up kind of destroying the page. So they have to be in the right places. There are ways of using these keywords on the page so that they get essentially they get rewarded by Google. It's not just a matter of like listing it a bunch of times. You have to include the important information as organically as possible. But then there are as an example, like with Hubbli, when you create a landing page on Hubbli, we actually give you this tool where you can type in the keyword, and it'll actually give you a grading on that page of how well that page is optimized for that keyword, and then it'll give you suggestions right there. It'll say like add it to the title or add it to the first paragraph, but it'll also say like this is bad or this is bad. So like the software literally does that for you. So it's very, very helpful. And it's really helpful as well to display. When somebody lands on a website, like they're greeted with a display of information. So you want to have it above the fold. That's the first thing they're going to see. So this is the area that's obviously visible before somebody has to scroll down. So ideally, you want your most important information displayed above that line. So here's an image of what that looks like. So this is an example from a site called Top 10 WordPress. It's just a bit of helpful conference. Again, these are just best practices. So for this to work well, like you'll need to brainstorm the biggest selling points about your school again. So again, I'm coming back to this, that question about what should an About Us page have. Well, you want to think about, what are the most important things, whether it's, class sizes are small, or you offer advanced classes in this particular area. You might want to mention those points here. And as I already spoke about, it's definitely essential to include your contact information on your landing page. Phone number, address, or whatnot as well. And you want to add buttons, or enrollment boxes. So placing things really, it's pretty clear what the goal of this page is, right? So there's one bold statement, create your future, with a smaller kind of supporting sentence just below it. A contact box is also displayed prominently, right? That's that big orange bright box that you can't really miss. So parents can easily, add their information there. And this is just an example of, obviously the imagery here is geared towards, I wouldn't say a Montessori school, it's more like a college, but if you switch this with, young kids, toddlers, or playing in a park or whatnot, you've got a great Montessori school landing page here. So keep in mind that this should ideally fit like the previous image above the fold as well. Um, and you know, you can have parents start the enrollment process right away, you know, right from your landing page, right? So you include these buttons. You know, you want these buttons to be really, really, really prominent, because the idea is, as much as possible, you want people to be able to look without having to think. They just, by doing a very quick scan, understand before they read a single word about your school, they should know what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to do it. So if this website just pops up in front of your face, your brain is automatically registering like where to fill out the information, and and what information you're looking for. Like register now, like bam, like that just pops up, and then they might read, but their brain is already processed where they're going to take the action. You don't want them to have to. It cannot happen the other way. You want them to first, like understand the layout of the page. You want them to naturally, without thinking, instantly know where they're going to go, right? And then when and if they need to, they can read a little bit more information about you. You know, see your top 3 value propositions. You know, but you want them to, like, without thinking, know exactly what they're going to do on that page. So once you tackle all these points, you know, you're ready to hit publish. You know, in a few weeks you should begin to see, you know, some parent email addresses start to trickle in, and this is just organically as well. If you really tie it into a strong keyword strategy, you know. But you know, our dedicated team at Hubbli would be glad to offer, you know, helpful tips and guidance, and we're happy to do that at no cost. So definitely feel free to take us up on that offer. We'll do a little bit of a dive into your website and give you some tips.
Well, Jono, that's great. Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. I couldn't, you know, as I'm watching for the emails that are coming in or the messages, I didn't see if I had myself muted. We've covered a lot of territory, and people are asking me all kinds of interesting questions. Margaret Whitley, again, is somebody who you might want to chat with. She's down in London and has a school that I've known for a long time. She asked a good question, you know, should there be parent portals or event portals? In other words, like classrooms and so forth. And of course, that is what Hubbli does, among many other things, is has that sort of setting up for groups. For example, at Newgate, we've set up not only classroom groups where they can talk to each other and we can post to them, and you know, depending on the permission settings you give, you can either let parents comment on posts or just read them but not comment, or initiate posts. I mean, you can do all sorts of things, but it's all internal and can only be seen by the people you've given permission to access that particular group. And of course, we have a group for the entire school, and then we have groups for the various committees and a group for the board and the admin team. And these are different from sending out sort of email listservs. I mean, one thing you have not mentioned about Hubbli that I'll mention is the fact that, among other things, you're trying to reduce the number of software platforms that we use. For example, for those who use MailChimp and Constant Contact, I've used both of those for a long time. I recently converted to Robly, which I like a lot. It's kind of different and interesting, but none of them are part of my master database. And so keeping things straight is incredibly hard. I've got Montessori Compass, I've got Hubbli, I've got MailChimp, and what I'm looking forward to is having everything in one data place. You also haven't mentioned the idea that if a school uses QuickBooks Online, which is the software that a lot of people use to manage their accounting, you've got a API interface so that the QuickBooks account is updated as you change information in Hubbli, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, it's interesting. Like all the stuff I'm talking about today is very ancillary to what Hubbli does. Our core product. If I take a minute here, I'll just kind of jump into it. So, we at Hubbli have built an all-in-one communication system. That's really the goal of Hubbli. So our core features are social groups. So it's kind of like I like to call it a parent portal 2.0. We actually give you your own private social network. So it's like having your own Facebook with a whole bunch of school-specific communication features built in the right context, all mashed together, ideally for a school scenario. And then we let you have, you can have paperless administration, like having a paperless office, right? All those forms, reports, and documents and documentations and all that stuff can be paperless. So you've got digital files and records as well. So not only having the forms digital, but collecting the information and looking the information up takes seconds because you're not doing it by paper. And you never have to transfer data from paper to another system. It's all done all for you automatically. Our messaging system is guaranteed, meaning like we guarantee that the message will get to the parents. Like that's meaning like within Hubbli, you can send group communications, you can send private emails, private messages between staff and parents, and within that system, it's guaranteed to get there. And one of the highest, again, our overarching goal is to create an appropriate place for parents and staff to connect with each other and foster more valuable parent engagement. We also have scheduling automation and online payments. So we've got full, whether it's incidentals, a field trip or pizza lunch or something like that, but full tuition management as well. And support, and that's really the key thing I think. On top of everything is that we're here, to support our members. So if you want to contact us directly, this is our information. That's our number. That's our website, and we'll share that information with you. What just happened there? I just lost my presentation. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I would love to, if anyone is interested in learning more about Hubbli, certainly we'd love to show it to you guys. And of course, as I offered before, we can start with, there's no strings attached to that assessment. If you want us to check out your website, by all means, we're happy to offer that as well.
Well, Jono, thank you so much for being with us. I will mention, out of respect for Karen, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, Guiafe is what I think it is. And I'd love a phonetic pronunciation, Karen. She's asked a number of questions about your student reporting service, and I'm not really sure how that works or that you really have that. But I know you certainly have reports. She's also asking about whether you know about blooms and how you compare with blooms. So Karen, both because of time and because you've got rather specific questions for today, I'm going to suggest you reach out to Jono. Jono's email is Jono, and it's a nickname his mom has given him, Jonathan, Jono@hubbli.com. Reach out to him, ask him any question you've got, and I'm sure he'd be happy to respond. And Jono, if you want to come back and speak about any of these issues in greater length, we'll be happy to. For those of you who are listening, if there's topics that you'd like to see us address, let us know. I should mention, by the way, that pretty soon we will be coming up on the end of the school year. I'm working on the schedule for the summer. There may be a week or two that we'll take off. I'm going to have my 70th birthday is coming up the week of June 16th, so I suspect there may not be a webinar that week. Not sure what my family's going to do, but hopefully it's going to be lots of fun. But I do look forward to celebrating the summer with you, unless you're in the Southern Hemisphere, in which case we can shiver around the fire together. Jono, I know you'll be back and join us again for other topics. And as I said, I think one of the things that you've touched on today that I think most school people have a real hard time with is the creating of high quality content. And I'd like to look at that both from the point of view of what Tomorrow's Child and the Montessori Family Alliance do for people and why you ought to support that, and why it's a lot easier than trying to produce that quality content yourself. Also, the issue of curating, because any parent that does a search is inundated with information these days. And the problem isn't whether it's out there, it's just so much, and a lot of it is garbage. So the trick is, how do you create coherent messaging to parents? And finally, what do you want to produce in-house, and how can you deliver it to people so they don't just read it, they actually engage with it? And I think that's the thesis of what you've been saying, Jono, is how do you get parents to actually pay attention and talk back with you instead of just consume passively the information?
Or ignore it altogether.
Or ignore it altogether. It is about relationship building, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you, again, I think the goal, I think the task at hand today is retraining parents to pay attention to the information being sent to them. And the starting point is to stop smacking them in the face with irrelevant information. And certainly Hubbli can make that really easy for you, but there's a lot of tools out there if you understand how to use them properly to make that work. But again, it's like a full-time job in and of itself, which is why Hubbli exists, because we take that hassle out of your life, basically.
Hey, Joan, I've got one last question for you. Shri is asking, can you provide or share the cheat sheet that you were talking about early in the webinar?
You bet. We'll Tim, you let me know what makes the most sense. If you want to share with them, or I can send everybody. We can send everybody a follow-up email with a link so they can download it directly.
Why don't we do both? I will be happy to send you the email of the people that attended today's session, or you can just send it to me, and I'll put it in the foundation's IMC members area where we put all the recordings and other documents. Also, Jono, if you would send me a PDF of your slideshow. I know a lot of people enjoy having that kind of document.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll send that along.
Well, this is great. Thank you, Jono, and thank you everyone else for sticking with us. This is Tim Seldin. Next week, we are going to be changing focus once again. We have a two-parter. Christine Lowry, who's been a frequent guest with us over the years, is going to be doing with me part 1 and part 2 on how a new and non-Montessori head can succeed in running a Montessori school. So we're essentially going to be tackling that really important question of the emerging Montessori school leader. I'll send you an email with information about it and a reminder. And I do want to remind everyone else that, we put recordings of these webinars in the International Montessori Council Members Library, and most of you are members of the International Montessori Council. If you're not, you should be. Whether you trained with MCI, Toronto Montessori Institute, AMS, AMI, or any other group, the IMC is for everybody, and it's very friendly and affordable. Lastly, I want to remind those of you who have not renewed or signed up for Tomorrow's Child for next year for your parents, we make it really affordable. It's about a third of the price of what it would cost them as individuals. And we're happy to have them sign up as individuals, but frankly, we didn't design it to make money. We designed it to sell it to you at cost, because we're here to help you, not just to push out ads and so forth to parents. The bottom line is go to Montessori.org. You can Look out for everything. You must already be on our email list. I know there was an email just today reminding people about the Summer Montessori Leadership Institutes, and we look forward to hearing from all of you on a frequent basis. So, and by the way, I see Karen is saying that she is not running a Montessori school exclusively, but a blend of progressive approaches. There you go. Well, there's many a Montessori school that sees themselves as being blended with other things. I think that's a whole different conversation I'd love to get into with some of my colleagues. Michael Dorr apologizes for not being with us this week. He's had some technical difficulty logging in. So I'd say for this week, Jono, thank you again for staying with us, and have a great day, and everyone else have a great week. This is Tim Seldin from the Montessori Foundation signing off.
Thank you.